In our fast-paced world, there are an ever-increasing number of things vying for our attention every day. When was the last time you really paused, took a breath, and really paid attention to the moment, paid attention to yourself? Today on Shak, we have Jasmine Evelyn, who is the founder of Mindful Movement, a registered yoga teacher and chartered physiotherapist. She specializes in pelvic health, where she uses the practice of yoga and physiotherapy to restore pelvic health for women and men. Welcome, Jasmine, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so I want to talk today about yoga, mindfulness, meditation. So maybe we could begin with how you started Mindful Movement and found your way into practicing and teaching yoga.
Right. I started Mindful Movement, I guess, as a yoga practice because I had been working as a physiotherapist. And I kind of got into yoga. You know, whenever I tell this story, it's the same because it's the truth. Because I had a knee injury and I really wanted to dance more. And I thought, well, yoga would help me to build strength in my legs, etc., and how to take away some of the knee pain. And so that's why I started. And I realized, okay, the knee felt better, it doesn't hurt. And I started kind of trying a few of the poses and concepts with my patients and noticing that they enjoyed it. And so that's why I decided, okay, let me become a yoga teacher. And then the name Mindful Movement, again, I always tell this story, started because I found myself having injuries all the time from a practice that I love. So imagine you're doing something that you love, which is yoga. And then it's like, why am I always having this chest pain in particular and this elbow pain? You're trying to do all these poses that, you know, maybe your body is not ready for. I remember I was in the shower and I thought, what am I doing wrong? Like, why am I getting all these injuries? What is missing? And it just came to me, it's mindfulness. You need to add mindfulness to your movement.
Trust me.
That's when I thought, okay, yes. That's when I thought, yeah, this is where I need to share this concept with others.
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. And trust me, I know as a sportswoman, I know a lot about injury and, you know, the trauma that's caused when you're sidelined. So when we talk about practicing yoga, what exactly, you know, do we mean? Is it just stretching? You know, what is it really when we talk about practicing yoga?
So there are many different aspects to yoga. I won't get into all of them, but there are different limbs. So postures, it will be one limb. But then there are other limbs where you talk about, you know, truthfulness, looking after yourself, not being harmful to others, etc. But I think I always say that my favorite definition of yoga is union between body and mind and taking time to focus on one thing. So, you know, practicing yoga could be, let's say, eating your breakfast and the only thing you're focusing on is your breakfast. You're not thinking about what you're going to do after. You're not thinking about, you know, the next meal you're going to have. You're just focusing on enjoying that meal at that time. And that in and of itself, that is yoga. But, you know, when people hear about yoga, they think, okay, yes, it is moving the body. But I would say when it comes to movement, what sets yoga apart from other types of movement practices would be the fact you're connecting breath and movement, connecting body and mind.
So as you mentioned mindfulness, so then how would you describe mindfulness? I know you said that was kind of important to your yoga practice, so maybe you could tell me a bit about mindfulness.
Okay, so mindfulness, let's take the example of doing yoga. Let's say I'm on my mat and I'm not really listening to what my body is telling me. I'm just doing the poses, I'm just making shapes, not moving with my breath. When you bring in a component of mindfulness, you're listening to what your body is telling you. So you're noticing, actually, today I don't feel very strong. You know, my arms aren't feeling very strong today. I don't feel like doing, you know, a full, let's say, warrior. So let me take my back knee down. Let me put my knee on the mat and let me modify. Let me do
Mm-hmm.
what my body is saying. So mindfulness is like checking in with your body.
Okay.
Mindfulness also, I would say, is similar to the definition of yoga that I gave, where I said you're focusing on one thing at a time. So
Mm-hmm.
you're having a cup of tea and you are enjoying the mug, you're enjoying
Mm-hmm.
the warmth of the tea, you're enjoying the moment that you're in, and you maybe you don't have your phone at that point. You're not thinking about, okay, when I'm done this tea, I have to go now and rush in and get in the bank line. Mindfulness is also being in the bank line and just being in the bank line
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about the next place you have to go.
Not being too
So
distracted. Yeah.
exactly, it's about taking a moment of pause, and wherever you are, just being in that moment is what I think mindfulness is.
Yeah. So you'd say
Being
like
in the moment,
living in the moment. Yeah. And I,
living
I
in the
suppose
moment.
I suppose that's not to be confused with the idea of, YOLO, you only live once kind of
Not
thing.
yeah, no, not not YOLO, but it's about, to me, and this is how I find mindfulness can really help with stress.
Okay.
Because let's say you have a million errands to run in a day, but when you're in the bank line, you can only be in the bank line. You can't do the next errand. So what are you
It's
thinking about? What are you
it's
stressing about
true.
it?
It's
Be
true.
in the bank line and just know that when the bank line is done, you move on to the next task
Fair
and
enough.
then on to the next task. So for me, that is what mindfulness is: taking it a step at a time, taking it a moment at a time, and aside from that, taking downtime and just focusing on yourself.
Yeah, and I guess it's interesting too because like I've been reading up and I see, mindfulness is actually becoming, I guess, what you would say mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
incorporated in like, corporate training and all this kind of thing. So
Yeah,
that's
but if
definitely. Mm-hmm.
yeah, but I think when people hear mindfulness, they think, oh, like, I don't have time to be mindful. I don't have time to lie down and be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
But mindfulness, for example, when I drive to work on mornings and come home on evenings, that is my time to turn on the radio or maybe not have on the radio, and that's my time to just be in the car. That is
Okay.
my time for mindfulness. Just that space of time. It doesn't have to be anything fancy at
Okay.
all.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
So how would you say like yoga, mindfulness, meditation, how do we bring the meditation into that? How do they all kind of go together?
Um, Again, I like to keep things simple because when the average person who, they hear meditation, they're thinking, okay, I have to be doing some kind of transcendental floating. I have to be oming with my ankles crossed and my fingers touching in some kind of mudra. And again, it doesn't have to be that. For me, meditation, simply focusing on your breath is a meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoying your breath in and enjoying your breath out. Again, that is mindfulness. Again, that is yoga. So
Mm-hmm.
it all
Mm-hmm.
plays. So your meditation can be one breath in and one breath out, and the fact you focused on that and only that, that was a meditation.
Got it.
So it's all about really just taking time for introspection and taking time to slow down. It's
Okay.
not complex, and I don't really want talk about you know breathing techniques and this
Mm-hmm.
and the next because it's not accessible to everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
yoga, mindfulness, meditation is something that anybody can do.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be complex at all.
So for you, do you find that you meditate in silence? Or are you somebody that likes, like meditative music?
I meditate through movement. So I
Okay.
am not a person who will necessarily sit still. Sometimes I do it after my practice,
Mm-hmm.
but I meditate through movement. So whether that is yoga,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's dance,
Okay.
um, sometimes it's just me being on my mat doing whatever, but that is my meditation. Your meditation can be painting. Your
Mm-hmm.
meditation can be at the beach taking a swim. Your meditation can be getting in your car and going for a drive.
Yeah.
It's all about what helps you to almost escape,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
allows you to take a break from life. So I remember I did a meditation once, and it was more of a traditional meditation. And when I got out of it, I feel as though I just had 2 weeks of vacation because your brain doesn't got a chance. to relax and reset. And, you know, as I said, it doesn't have to be sitting in a corner
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
dark. It can be, you know, it can be putting on rock music and banging your head for 10 minutes
Yeah.
if that works for you.
And I mean, you make a good point there about, your mind's a vacation, because I feel like our minds
Yeah.
these days are, just bombarded with
Yes.
all kinds of thoughts. And it's actually quite challenging to kind of, quiet busy minds.
Yes, it is. And no, something that happens to me, I know before isolation and everything, life was really busy. And I noticed coming out the end of the week, I would have problems falling asleep
Mm-hmm.
because I would be thinking, and that's not a problem that I usually have, but I would
Okay.
be thinking about, oh, wait, I still have this to do, the next thing to do, I
Mm-hmm.
have to do that. And, you know, I think, and I'm hoping that isolation, everything taught us a lesson in slowing
Mm-hmm.
down and
Yeah.
checking in and realizing that you don't really have to kill yourself doing a million things that we thought we had to want. So
That's that's true.
yeah.
So, I mean, do you think you need to be we talked about yoga, but you think you need to be spiritual to practice yoga, or subscribe to like a specific belief system in order to.
Uh, I guess that is a broad being spiritual. Like, what exactly do you mean?
Mhm.
I feel like spirituality in this context to me is just connecting with yourself.
Okay.
And something that is the I know that sounds some people are gonna that sounds so airy fairy, but it's the truth. It's the
Fair
truth.
enough.
And some people think okay, yoga is something connected to Hinduism or
Mhm.
some kind of religion, and that's not the case. Yes, some of the poses are named after um, deities or gods or
Mhm.
whatever in um,
In Hinduism.
Hinduism, but
Mhm.
um, really and truly, when you read those stories and you kind of read the morals of the stories behind that, you realize that it's applicable to everyday life. And
Okay.
because you read that story and you doesn't mean that you are Hindu or you believe in
Mhm.
Hinduism. It's applicable for anybody. Good parables for anybody.
Okay.
Um, I say anybody could benefit from yoga,
Mhm.
any person, any religious or spiritual belief that you have. But I think deep down, at the end of the day, the spiritual gains from yoga would be connecting to yourself and taking those quiet moments
Okay.
and learning from self, honestly.
Okay. So, I mean, to your mind, what are some of the biggest myths you would say about yoga and practicing yoga?
Yeah, that is a really good follow-on question. It'd be that when you're practicing yoga and you are, into a specific type of belief system or
Mhm.
that you are, I think I think that is changing. I find people are not as narrow-minded when
Okay.
it comes to yoga. I find that more people of um, different beliefs
Mhm.
are accepting of it. Aside from that, on the total opposite spectrum, I think the biggest myth is that people think, okay, to do yoga, I have to be flexible.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, the reason why you're coming to yoga is because you're not,
Fair
and
enough that
because
you're
you
not
want
flexible.
to, yeah, or they think, and my balance is horrible, so I can't do yoga. And I'm thinking, well, the reason you're coming is because you want to
Mhm.
improve your balance and your flexibility.
Yeah.
Um, and people think you have to have a particular body type and a
Mhm.
particular look, and that's not the case. Yoga is for every single person. You can do yoga. Even if you can't move your body, you can do yoga, which we spoke about because yoga is not just movement,
Mhm.
but yoga
Mhm.
is also, breath work, etc. So I would say the biggest myth that I come across, aside from people thinking, okay, it's a religious thing, which
Mhm.
I find is not the case as much anymore, is
Mhm.
that people think I have to be really bendy and I have to be, you know, look a certain way to do it, and that's not the case.
Yeah, because as you said, there's a kind of perception that, certain cultural messages about beauty and fitness and
Mm-hmm.
health
Mm-hmm.
kind of, are required.
And yeah, and the funny thing is that people will say, I'm not flexible and I can't headstand and stuff, so I can't do yoga. But the thing is, most people who you see that are flexible and can headstand could not do it when they started.
That is true.
Doing yoga is the reason why they can do it.
That is
So
true. That is true.
it's not like you could do it and you decided, all right, yeah, let me go and do yoga now so that I can,
You can show
flex
everybody.
somehow. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, on the other side of that, would you say that there's like a gender nature to the participation in yoga, like in terms of the breakdown of men and women? Like, have you found that to be the case with your students or fellow instructors?
I would say that most of my students are women. And when I think about yoga teachers in Barbados, I can, off the top of my head, think of 2 males. But with that being said, men do come to class, right? And men do yoga in Barbados. And when they do come to class, I think everybody enjoys them being at class.
Okay.
And I always say some of the strongest men that I've seen, both in person and on social media, are people who do yoga. So people think are men who do yoga. Because people think, okay, if you're a man doing yoga, it's feminine, and no, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And I still get the one-off. And you know what I would say is that a lot of men are interested in yoga, but they're intimidated to come because they think the class is going to be mainly women. So I would get men saying to me, I want to come to yoga, but are there men at class, or do men do yoga? But they're really interested and they really want to come. But I think they don't because they think, they're not going to be many men and it's going to be just women.
Well, I mean, there's some people who might think that that's an advantage, but
that is true. But I would say, remember that yoga is not just about stretching. So if there are any men listening, the stretching is good because it will help your muscles to be stronger, because muscles have to have a good length tension relationship. So you want those muscles to be able to stretch so they could be strong. But yoga is also about strength. And a lot of times when men come to yoga, I always ask them, was it what you expected? And often they say, no, I didn't expect it to be so hard. Not that it was hard, but I think they were thinking it was just,
yeah, just pausing and standing there, stretching. Yeah.
Very, just moving the arms, just moving the legs slow. And then when they actually break a sweat at class, it's like, okay, didn't expect that.
Yeah.
So, but I would say that men are receptive to yoga for sure.
Okay, cool. So at the beginning, I mentioned that you are a pelvic health physiotherapist. So maybe you could tell me a bit about, what it means to be a pelvic health physiotherapist exactly.
Okay, this is one of the hardest questions because the answer is so long. Okay, a pelvic health physiotherapist is an orthopedic physio, or I would say a musculoskeletal physio. So I'm a physio who would treat necks, backs, knees, whatever. But it's just that my special interest, or I've done special training in pelvic health. Right? What a lot of people don't realize is that there are muscles at the base of our pelvis that really work hard for us to help us stay continent, which means that it stops us from leaking urine and feces during the day, right? But they also help to keep our pelvic organs in place. The muscles work with our core to keep our bodies strong, our abdominal muscles and back strong. There's a lot that goes into pelvic health. So I predominantly treat those muscles and joints of the pelvis, so the pelvic floor muscles and the joints of the pelvis. But then it also goes into things like helping persons who are chronically constipated, women who've had babies and want to get their core rehab going. So they suffer with what we call diastasis recti, where the abdominal muscles do not come back together. So pelvic health physios will help with that. It's a long, long list. We help people who are with sex, help erectile dysfunction, incontinence, as I said. There's a long, long list, but it's a very rewarding job because oftentimes, pelvic pain and dysfunction surrounding the pelvic floor can also be very mentally taxing. And imagine, that you don't want to go with your friends and stuff because you are afraid you might leak urine or, gas or feces. So a lot of times people are very emotionally under stress as well. So
Yeah.
it's nice to be able to help them physically, but also emotionally, and see how their quality of life changes.
Okay, that is quite interesting. So, I mean,
Mhm.
do people normally are they directed to usually by their doctor, or do they kind of stumble
Yeah,
onto you kind of on
it's
their own?
right. It's a mix. So people will stumble onto me when they are
Mm-hmm.
looking for pelvic health physio.
Okay.
When they're looking online, or maybe they stumble across me on Instagram. But their doctors will refer them to me, usually their GP or
Okay.
their gynecologist, urologist, um, some is gastroenterologist, depending on
Okay.
um,
What the
what
issue is?
what the issue is, will refer them to me. So there's a mixture. Or a lot of times, also, let's say somebody has come to me and say, you know what, my friend also is complaining of a problem like this, because pelvic floor dysfunction is very common.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
don't realize it, but it's very, very common. And once you start talking about it, you'll be surprised how many people are living with it. So
Okay.
oftentimes it will happen through client referral or doctor's referral, or patients finding me online.
Okay. Well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was definitely quite interesting. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, what would you say is your mission as a yoga instructor and physiotherapist?
Um, as a yoga teacher, I and a physio, I really just want people to move more,
Mm-hmm.
and with that movement, I know it sounds cliche, but to be mindful,
Mm-hmm.
because I
Mm-hmm.
have seen what mindfulness in my practice has done for me. So I have actually attended a yoga class. I didn't feel 100% on a day, and I modified for the whole class. And the teacher came up to me after, and she said, I admire the fact that you listened to your body and you did what was best for you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's better to do that than to push and then be set back,
Yeah,
right?
it's true.
So I really encourage all of my students. I always give modifications. I always tell them, listen to how you feel. You don't have to do something that your body doesn't feel like doing. So
Mm-hmm.
encouraging people to be movers, but to be mindful movers is my first thing. And then physio ways, the same thing. So when my patients come to me, whenever a patient comes to me, exercise, which is with all physios, exercise is a part of your treatment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And um, for my pelvic, when it comes to my pelvic floor work, my main mission there is really to educate, firstly, home here in Barbados, because I know a lot of people are suffering with pelvic floor dysfunction, and there's a stigma attached to it. Like, up to recently, I had a patient said she hasn't told anybody because they will think that she's promiscuous. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, well, no, that's not the case. Like, this,
Yeah.
I'm sure if you told your friends, they would tell you, I actually suffer from the same thing or something
Mm-hmm.
similar.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I kind of want to break the stigma around it, and I want people to realize that even though it is common, it's not normal. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have
Mm-hmm.
to live with, just because you've had a baby doesn't mean you have to live with pelvic pain.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you've had a baby doesn't mean that you have to leak urine. Just because you've had a baby doesn't mean that when you are laughing or when you are exercising that you're leaking urine and stuff like that. So that is my main mission from that perspective,
Okay.
showing that you don't have to live with persistent pelvic floor dysfunction and pelvic pain.
Okay. So,
Mhm.
lastly, tell me about the Friday yoga lime. I see your poses weekly on Instagram, some of which look fairly sophisticated, I have to say, especially for me. So,
Okay, so the Friday yoga line was actually born from a yoga challenge that I did in collab with some other yogis just after lockdown. So I think it was Nats Yoga Creative, Carrie Malushi, and Akam Yoga.
mm-hmm.
We thought that it would have been nice to kind of bring all the yogis together after lockdown through Instagram, and have some prizes and stuff to go with that. And then the response was really good, and it was good to see some people posting that hadn't been posting in a while and kind of connect
Mm-hmm.
with everybody. And one person who participated suggested, why don't we keep it going, even though it won't be for prizes? Why don't
Mm-hmm.
we keep this Friday yoga, kind of like a Friday yoga line thing going, where we post something and get to connect at least every week?
Okay.
So that is where it was born. So basically what it is, it's a hashtag, Friday
Mm-hmm.
Yoga Lane, and we have a theme every week. So it might be like let's say a hip opener, or it should be like a hip stretch, or
Mm-hmm.
a backbend, something, a theme, and then we would have a question that goes with it. So share what you're grateful for, share, things like that, what yoga means to you.
Okay.
Just as a way to get to know the other yogis and other people on Instagram.
Okay.
And to share also your story. So that's how it kind of came about.
All right. Well, I will continue to watch those poses.
You must join. You must join in one of these days. Even if you don't do a pose, you can at least, you can say what you're grateful for.
Okay. I feel like that part I feel like I can do.
You can do. Or you can answer the question for sure.
So thanks, Jasmine, for joining me today. It was very informative and interesting, and I really hope that our listeners gain something from it. And as you said, that if they have a challenge, that they don't suffer in silence, and that they can, as you say, live in the moment, take a little bit of time, and focus on themselves.
Yeah, I remember, as I said, we chatted about, mindfulness and meditation and all that stuff is not as complicated. I know it seems complicated sometimes, but it doesn't have to be. Just do what you can.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening and joining me under the Shak tree. When I began, I wasn't sure where we were headed, but I'm definitely happy with where we ended up. We're pressing pause here, but we will be back for season 2 on November 11th. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and many more. Stay connected on IG, Facebook, and Twitter, or by email at akilia@shakshak.club. Let's continue to shake things up.